Gym Candy, Part 2, Chapter 4. That glow lasted all the way to Sunday night, but by the time I went to bed, a tiny bit of fear had crept into my head, and that fear grew and grew until Monday afternoon. It had crowded out everything else. My dad had warned me that it was going to happen. "You're going to feel lost," he said Sunday night. "You're going to feel like you don't belong. Just stay mentally tough." I think we've all been there where we have a huge event that we're anticipating and we can't sleep and we have that anxiety, that excitement kind of all rolled into one about what it's going to be like. Are you going to live up to the expectations that people are thinking that you perform a certain way and all of this? And that's what Mick is feeling. Whoops, I lost my spot. Sorry, hold please. I walked down to Shy's Hole High with Drew, but that didn't help because he was as nervous as I was. We had trouble finding the locker room, and once we found it, we were afraid to ask where to get our equipment. Some of the players looked about 20 times bigger than the biggest guy we'd faced. I mean, think about that. They're in a locker room with like high school seniors, and they're like little 8th graders. So think about like it's such a huge difference in like how your body changes over those several years. A few had beards, more had piercings, almost all had tattoos. It wasn't a little jump we were taking. It was a huge jump. I was so nervous I must have seen Deshaun Freeze 6 times before I registered who he was. "Good luck," I said to him. He nodded back, but didn't say a word. Brad Middleton, the guy who'd clued us in about Trahane, came over. I thought both you guys would be here," he said, a big smile on his face. "Let me show you where you get your stuff." I thought I'd feel better once I stepped onto the field, but I didn't. I'd listen intently to every single word Downs or any of the assistant coaches said, but not one would actually penetrate. That whole first day of practice, I was 10 seconds behind everybody in everything. I butchered simple drills such as running through the tires and hitting the blocking sleds, drills I'd done 1,000 times. My hands were like stones. It seemed as if I dropped every single pitch out that came my way. 5 other guys besides me were trying out for running back, and I was last in everything. By 5 o'clock, it was so bad that I went light in the head and was afraid I was going to faint, and I thought that would be the end of it, that I'd never be able to return. But somehow, someway, I got through the practice. I'd seen Drew off and on during those 2 hours, but for most of the practice, we were in different groups. When I met up with him afterward, he had his head down. "I sucked," he said. "And you know what the worst thing is? I'm going to go home and my dad will tell me it's perfectly okay if I'm on JV, that the important thing is that I have fun. At least you won't have to listen to that." He was right about that. My dad drank his coffee while I ate breakfast Tuesday morning. I told him most of what had gone wrong, but not all. "Nothing to worry about," he said. "Put yesterday out of your mind and start fresh this afternoon. A bad first practice is pretty typical, and your coach knows it, but you can't string a bunch of them together. You've got to show him you belong." I must have looked as down as I felt. How could I show the coach I belonged when I didn't think I did? My dad took another sip of coffee. "Let's get you a plan, Mick. Something specific. How many running backs were there?" "6, I said. "Downs will probably carry 3 running backs, maybe 4. To be safe, you've got to work yourself up to number 3. Today, look for the weakest guy in the group. Stand next to him every time you can. Try to do all your individual drills just before or just after him. Who's the number 1 guy, the starter?" "Matt Drager." "Don't even look at him. Don't even follow him. Let somebody else eat his dust. Once you're sure the coach knows you're better than the number 6 guy, do the same thing to number 5. Pick 'em off like ducks in a row. One at a time. Boom, boom, boom. You've got 3 weeks to get ahead of 3 guys. You can do it." What do you think about that plan? Do you think Mick's dad has a solid plan? Right, don't look to the leader and try to emulate him or be better than him. But instead, if you're the number 6 guy, look at the number 5 guy and try to be better than him, right? And then slowly work your way up the ladder to where you are one of 3 guys rostered on the team. Do you think that's a good strategy? Everything was easier the second day. We got our gear right away and were out on the field early. When we broke into groups by position, I steered clear of Matt Drager. The other guys, they were the ones I had to beat, starting with Nathan Dorsey. On Tuesday, I worked it so I was side by side with Dorsey as much as possible. I didn't worry about anybody but him. When my focus narrowed, most of the panic was gone. I just played. By Thursday, I was sure the coaches knew I was better than Dorsey, so then I went after Aaron Cunningham. making sure we were shoulder to shoulder all practice long. Friday after practice, Coach Downs posted the depth charts for the first time. Drew was number 3 at quarterback. I was number 4 among the running backs. There was a chance we were in already, and we both knew it. But we couldn't let ourselves slip back one spot, and the best way not to slip is to push forward. The guys we passed, they didn't like us at all. They'd glower at us in the locker room and trash talk us, saying how we were punk 8th graders and they'd take care of us yet. But you can't back down just because somebody's older than you, and we didn't. After the last practice, 2 sheets of paper were posted outside the gym. Before he'd let us look, Downs called us together. Those lists over there, one says varsity and the other says junior varsity. But don't go thinking that any of this is set in stone. You guys on JV, if you play well and some varsity players dogging it, I'll bring you up in a heartbeat. He paused. All right then, I'm not going to have any mad dash over there. Juniors, you go first. Find your name and your name only, then go into the locker room. We were last. Drew and me and Deshaun and a couple of other guys from different middle schools. I ran my hand down the varsity list and saw my name. I kept looking, even though I wasn't supposed to, and there was Drew's. I can't find my name on either list, Deshaun said, panicked. You're there, Drew pointed, shoving him and laughing. Varsity. We all made varsity. I called my dad as soon as I got home. I knew it, he said. I knew it. Where do you stand, number 2 or number 3? He didn't post depth charts, just rosters. Come on, Mick, you know well where you stand. He was right. I'd passed them all, except for Drager. He went silent for a moment when I told him. Can you get him? He asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe. My mom came home an hour later. She kissed me on the forehead and told me how happy she was for me. Did you call your dad? Yeah. I'm glad you did, she said. So Mick, not only does he follow his dad's strategy of always slowly working his way up the ladder, but he does so well that he's the number 2 guy on the varsity team going into the summertime. There's only one guy ahead of him, which is very impressive again if he's an 8th grader going into 9th grade. His body is not fully developed yet, and yet he outworked the rest of the guys. So we have to think about what work ethic Mick must have to have achieved that position. And it's all the more sweeter for him the fact that his friends, Drew and Deshaun, also made the varsity team.